Everybody, welcome to the Black Filmmakers Matter podcast. And today we have the most gracious. I'm so glad he's here. I have so many questions. Filmmaker Adrian Bobb. How are you, man?
Good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, great. So you sent me a piece of your trailer, and it blew my mind. I literally ran around the house showing my whole family. I am so proud of you and thank you for sharing that with me. Like, are you keeping it hidden or is it available for people to watch?
It will be soon. We're just finishing up our festival run, which was fantastic. We've been around the world. We just finished in Urbanworld in New York for our New York premiere. Yeah, we've been everywhere: Spain, New Zealand, all over the US, all over Canada. Germany. It's been fantastic. So
okay, so you've been traveling the project. Okay.
Yeah. So it should be out soon. If you follow me on any of the socials, you'll definitely know when. It will be online soon.
Okay, so tell us about your current project that I have fallen in love with.
Right. So The Foreman, it's a short film that's about an event that breaks time, essentially. Okay. And when that happens, everything is in chaos. Everything's kind of in a state of decay. And we follow a paleontologist, two paleontologists, one of which is kind of trying to keep it together for both parties, for both of the survivors. And she knows enough to survive, but she doesn't know enough to know how this is even possible. So we kind of follow her as she puts it together and starts understanding not just what the world is currently, but how this could happen and who might be responsible for it. And that kind of is a bit of a tip off to the title, which is called The Foreman.
Okay, so would you label it sci-fi or?
Yeah, I mean, I've been labeling it sci-fi horror. Which that would be in the same bracket as films like Alien, Arrival, Annihilation, especially, where it's very much this kind of mix of things that are incredible but also terrifying. Even Jurassic Park kind of has a little bit of that in the film, the first one, I mean. So yeah.
How long have you been filmmaking?
I've been filmmaking, I would say 19. And even then it was I wouldn't even I would say it isn't filmmaking, but I learned so much about how to make things, how to make videos at that time, and then just slowly kind of became more into it, and then became more a part of the filmmaking process. I did work as a storyboard artist to concept designer, eventually worked in VFX, and in the last 5 years have been kind of making a kind of turn from VFX and becoming more permanently a writer-director.
Okay. So what's your favorite part? Is that your favorite part of filmmaking, the writing or the directing?
It's kind of a weird thing. I feel like I do filmmaking such a weird process for me. It's so unlike everyone else. Like while I'm writing, I'm designing, I'm drawing, I'm putting together like what can we do? How can this look? I'm starting to build models in 3D. It's kind of this messy creative process for me.
Right.
And I feel like my favorite part is directing, hands down. When I'm on set, it's bliss for me. Because it's at that point that it becomes outside your head. Because up until that point, when you're writing, when you're designing, when you're building everything, it's very much a product of kind of just your head. It's all inside, right? Okay. And when you're out and you're directing, suddenly there's all these people that are talented in their own way that are contributing to it, but they're making it alive. And it's this weird thing where you get to see, it's no longer yours anymore in that way, where it becomes the actors. the actors, how your characters, and you're seeing it come to life in ways that you couldn't have possibly done it on your own. So I feel like for me, my favorite part is directing because it's new. It becomes new again at that process. And you have to make up decisions fast, which is different from when you're working on writing and eventually later on in post, where it is a lot more isolated, where you are kind of working on things on your own again. So directing is that one little bit where you're kind of like, all right, we did everything we can to get to this point. Let's make the best of this moment, and let's all contribute. Let's all see what we can do and figure this out in the moment. And to me, I'm not used to that part, so that part's more of a thrill for me.
Okay, that is awesome when you just see something that was in your head just come to life. It is great. What's the worst part of filmmaking for you, or something you continue to struggle with, or you struggled with and you overcame?
I would probably say the writing stage, because I am such a visual person. Writing is always tough for me. I mean, I still like doing it because I like coming up with concepts and trying to figure things out. But because for me, filmmaking is such a multidisciplinary thing. Like it takes on so many different art forms.
Yes.
And for me as an artist, I studied in university for drawing and sculpting and all those sorts of things. Those things are just intuitive for me. I don't have to think about that when it comes to like, what does this look like? What does that look like? That's easy for me. But writing it out in a way where another person can understand what I'm thinking is tougher, because writing isn't in film. Film is such a visual medium that when you're writing something, you're like, and then they see this thing and this thing looks great. It feels like a cheat for me, and that doesn't feel right. So it's a little tough to get past that kind of like, I want to describe everything, and then I want to, make sure everyone knows exactly everything that's happening. And then someone might read it and be like, I don't know, like this feels too detailed. And it's like, okay, so I have to bring it back. So for me, writing is definitely the most difficult part.
Okay. So you said you also enjoy directing. Now, when I direct, and before I go, it's crazy because I've only been doing this like 7, 8 years. So I'm a baby when it compares to you guys. But when I go in, it is like you said, it's like Zen. It's like you're just like this, a horse with a carrot in front of you.
Yeah,
Whereas
totally.
before, everything is like, scattered, and I love it. It's a beautiful space. So, what's the next project you're going to work on? Or do you have one you're going to work on, or something else?
Yeah. I mean, as soon as we did Foreman, we did Foreman kind of at the end of 2021, like kind of just when like COVID was still a thing. So we were still very, very much, thinking about all the protocols and all of those sorts of things. But ever since then, it's been kind of full throttle. So I have another short coming out called Drifters. That's a sci-fi romance, which is kind of an interesting twist. I've never done that before. It just kind of happened naturally, and that one was my first time I got to work on the volume space, which is the same space that is used in shows like The Mandalorian, for example.
Okay.
So that was the first time I got to use that, and that was a fantastic experience. And I did a television show for an indie anthology project, horror project. So that should be coming out hopefully next March. So that was really interesting. And what else? And then
I want to see that.
Yeah,
I'm a horror buff, so please let me know when that comes out. Okay.
absolutely. It's great because I've always kind of been more on the sci-fi side, but I feel like lately, and even with Foreman being a good example, I started kind of drifting more into horror. And I honestly think horror is almost like pinnacle filmmaking. It uses every technique that you could use. Like it uses practical, it uses VFX, it uses just good cinematography. And I find that that's something that makes it different from a lot of other genres. I feel like horror, you use every tool, everything you got, and it's as important to nail the timing as much as like comedy too. So it's like you got to be like don't show anything here, and then you show something, and then it's very musical in that way. And I think
Right.
it could be a better filmmaker easily.
That scare has to be timed.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
It's so subtle. Like it's
Mhm.
sometimes it's like it's even just not cutting from something, just waiting a beat too long.
Okay.
That makes things scary, and I find that so. After doing a few horror projects, I feel like it's definitely made me a better filmmaker.
Now, what's a genre you would like to work on that you never worked on, but you would love to dip your toes in?
That's a good one. I mean, I've touched it a little bit. I've touched action a little bit,
Okay.
but I haven't. I would love to go full on with it. I'm such a fan of action,
Mhm.
and I've always kind of stayed a little bit away from it because I feel like I need the right expertise.
Okay.
I need to work with a team that knows how to do it right,
Mhm.
as opposed to just kind of jump in assuming that I can do it. It's
Right.
like it's almost like dance, in a way,
Okay.
like understanding people that know how to dance with each other as opposed to forcing people to say like do this thing and I want it to look like this. I feel like you need people that know what they're doing to make it right, and I feel especially in the last few years you've seen John Wick and some of these other similar
Right.
kind of
Right.
movies, and I feel like they do it so well because they're working with people that know what they're doing.
Okay. So
So
that's actually a good piece of advice for young people to work with people who know their craft.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think because like I mean with me, I love VFX not because of just doing for VFX sake. I like showing new things. I feel like I haven't gotten as much lately, but I feel like when I used to go to the movies when I was a kid, a big part of that was being able to see things that I've never seen before. Like you go to the movies and kind of you're excited because it's like, oh, I can't wait to see what's going to surprise me. And I can't haven't really had that since especially the 90s, maybe like early 2000s. Now, because everything is either shown too early or it's shown in the trailer or it's a remake of something you kind of already know and expect.
Mhm.
So for me, one of the biggest things for any project, so no matter what genre I tackle, my most important rule is to show them something they've never seen yet.
Yes. I feel like today a lot of projects are empty because like The Exorcist, for example.
Yeah,
When The Exorcist came out, you had the uses of different religions, different cultures. You had the Quran, the Bible, the Torah. You had researchers and history in that movie. The
yeah.
new one was like flat,
Oh, I haven't seen the new
like
one.
no history, no. It was just for kids, basically.
Oh, okay, okay.
If you wanted to dig deep into the realm of evil and the devil, and it just
I That's something that's always so important for me, especially when it comes to, I mean, I'm not as much of a fantasy person, but
right,
I can't wait to see us in that space because I feel like, we've gotten fantasies that are pretty much about one or two mythologies.
right,
And, people forget that there's over 2,000 different cultures in Africa alone, 3,000 in Asia alone, and even Europe has about like 400 compared to those. So, I mean, the fact that we just keep doing one or two, it's one of those things that drives me mad because it's just like there's so many stories out there. And when people are like, oh, we've done everything that's ever been done has been done, that's absolute nonsense. It's not true. I feel like there's just so many stories out there and perspectives because a culture isn't just one perspective,
that's
it's
right,
everybody that lives there.
that's right.
So you multiply that even further and you're to say we're running out of stories,
Mhm.
it's a
Not even
nonsense term. It makes no sense. It's not real. There's so many angles and there's so many things and mythologies that you can be talking about that I just feel like horror obviously is has a part in that. um,
Mhm.
I've always felt like there's a few projects. There's another anthology I might be doing next year where it was a similar sort of thing where I took my dad is Guyanese born, so he's an immigrant from Guyana, South America, and I took a monster kind of from that culture and really did a deep dive into where it came from, how they came up with it, and it's used in one of those episodes. So it's the same sort of thing where it's just like, you know, looking into other parts of the world, you're going to find all the creativity you could even, you can't even max it out even close. So I feel like for me, that's the thing that keeps me going. It's like, look into other cultures, look into what else is happening. And that's what to be fair, what was happening with The Exorcist too, is they were digging into something that wasn't really talked about before, and then bringing it into the screen. So it's like, you know, don't do The Exorcist now, like the remake. Do The Exorcist back then. Like do what they were doing, where it's like something novel, something we haven't seen before, or something you know, new and exciting. So for me, that's like my number one rule is no matter what I do, bring a new take to it. Bring something new.
That's right.
Leave the audience with something, you know, they didn't expect coming in.
So you remember Stephen King's It, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So my daughter, big It fan, big It head, and I'm talking about today's It.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
One day I told her, okay, you know, it's time to sit down and see where the new It came from.
Yeah.
Adrian, she watched the old It. That's her favorite now. And I said, why do you like it? She's like, Mom, it just more details, and you know, I know where it's coming from, and you know, I understand the characters a little more now.
Yeah, yeah.
So even a kid can see, you know, the difference. And also, before I ask you the next question, I wanted to, and I won't stop bringing this up, guys. It's important for you to know that in the UK, another filmmaker I spoke to told me that they're just doing things like Boys in the Hood. So that reminded me when you said how far behind we are. You know, I mention this almost every podcast just to let us understand that we are so far back.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And we've been put in a box for so long. It's hard to, you know.
Well, that's, I mean, like it's, you know, it's crazy to me because we've seen what happens when you have a culture that can tell its own stories. I mean, so far in terms of capital, really, it's been America, and you know, I would say maybe a close. Obviously, there's the UK and all those sorts of things, and the UK is very much kind of wrapped into like kind of Elizabethan history, which is or Victorian history, which is like, okay, but that's not Britain today. That's not even Britain before. Like there's so many other, like everything has so much more to it than the surface level.
Right.
And same with Japan. Like Japan has had such an active role in telling its stories as well. Imagine if you gave that to every country, you know, and we're not even talking about, like, even in Japan, there's subcultures. There's cultures within there, that cultures that go even before the samurai cultures, like cultures that go thousands of years. So it's and then of course that's not the limitations of stories. We can go thousands of years in the future too. So it's you know, there's just, the range is crazy everywhere, and it's just like it's for me, it's always one of those things where it's like, oh, even when you have days, and you have them as a writer where you can't think of things, you have writer's block.
Right.
I think it's an important thing to always have that in the back of your head, that like that it's not because there's lack of stories, it's just you finding your angle. What's the thing that hooks you?
Right.
What's the thing that brings you to the story? Not so much that you're out of stories. That's not a thing. There's no such thing as that. The real thing, and if it feels that way, then that might mean you need to look. You need to expand. You need to reach your hands out. You know, you need to traveling, obviously, if you can. Not everyone can, but the internet. Like, there's some times where I'm just on a deep dive, just researching on a culture, and it's just, you know, and you go so deep into it, and just like, what, like it breaks certain things you thought about the world. And I feel like that's such an important thing to do as an artist. You always need to break your conceptions. You always need to introduce a new take into your life as much as you can, because I think that as a creative person, I think that's just such a, that's what fuels you. I think that's what should always fuel you, is discovering something new that shocks you.
Wow, I'm trying not to drop a tear, people. This is emotional. You guys understand this emotional. Again, hearing people that look like me, been through what I've been through, understand what I'm going through. This is powerful. This is incredible. Thank you for coming on and joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's, again, like it's I think it's so important. Like you said, you said it perfectly. You know, it's important to see people like us doing what we do,
Mhm.
and you know, doing what we do and doing what we like, and showing that, you know, we're so much more than one thing. We are, you know, we are literally global. So to see every take under the sun being explored
Right.
is really beneficial. So thank you so much for doing what you do.